Hello, this is my first attempt at recording a video in relation to the Captain Carry project that I'm creating. Um, what we're going to look at today is going to be pretty much, let's say, the process that goes into turning an idea into something that is printable. Um, so obviously this is Blender, if you're not familiar with it. Um, it has this grid that um, you can use to display your pieces, and it's got, you know, let's call it this way of visualizing distances that can help you understand the sizes just by looking at it. Um, Something that I'll mention when working with Blender for things that you want to print is that you have to understand, let's say, the matrix system that Blender uses. And this is something that I learned pretty quickly when I started designing for 3D printing, because before I printed stuff before I designed stuff for 3D printing, I was designing stuff that would go into, for example, Unity as animations, and those were pretty much one-on-one, which meant 1 meter in Blender turned into 1 meter in the game. But that's not true when it comes to 3D printing, sadly. But it's not that difficult, but if I show you here the size of some of these objects, you might start screaming. So just this shape, let's call it, as you can see, it says it's 16 meters wide, 16 meters deep, because it's just a square, and then it's 68 meters tall. In reality, this translates as being almost 7 centimeter tall, and this is 1.5 centimeters wide. So that's something to take in consideration when you're dealing with shapes in Blender. Is, for example, if I want to create a 5mm peg, then I need to check, for example, this cylinder. This is 12. That will be 1.2 centimeters, or 0.22 in this case. So you need to really size it so that it works for you. Now, I usually work with basic shapes when I start a project, and for these videos I'm going to focus on this part, which is the shuttle and the tank combining together, but I also want them to be able to combine into a robot mode, and then they can be separated, and they should have space for a MicroMaster to ride into them. But then while combined as a robot, I want them to be able to transform into the face for Captain Carry. So the guy alone, I'm gonna be call him Carry, which is kind of like the way Fortress becomes Fortress Maximus, with the name as well. So Captain Carry without the big body is gonna be just Carry. So names apart, the first thing that we need to take in consideration when creating a new anything really, but in this case a new transformer, is if you have any reference. So in this case, as you can see, I have imported images as planes, so these are bidimensional. They don't have a three-dimensional property, but they're good to keep in my project because I can use them as reference to say, that's how it's supposed to look when it opens up. This is how it's supposed to look when it's combined together. And then obviously the rubber mold I'm creating out of thin air, let's say. Um, but yeah, it's just a matter of having something that is a reference to start with, whether it is an original transformer that you're trying to recreate or something completely new, but you should have an idea of what you want to create and what it's gonna look like. So this is what I usually do. I prepare um, a rough, very rough, let's call it sketch, or very rough shapes of what the item, let's call it, is gonna look like uh, first, and then I play around with these shapes and see, this is gonna be the tank, this is gonna be the shuttle. Then when they combine together, they can turn into this guy, so the cannons for the tank can become weapons, maybe. Uh, and then, we would have the head pop out from somewhere. And then when it turns into the head, it's just gonna have things fold in a typical headmaster way with the legs at the back, like that. So the legs are gonna be at the back. Maybe they're gonna pick together or something. Or they're just gonna sit there. The arms are gonna shift back a little bit. You know, that kind of idea. So this is obviously a rough, very rough, let's call it schematic for what I'm expecting to do with this. And then you start creating, you start shaping what you want to do. Now, I have this, which is what I had created before I restarted the project and before I had the idea of having this guy turn into its own transformable figure. Um, so it's not, let's say, bad, but it didn't take into account a lot of things. Uh, for example, these yellow wings are supposed to be arms, so they're not gonna be big enough. So I can take them as, this is the size of what I want it to be created, but I need to recreate 99% of this as a new model. Same goes for the tank. This were kind of trying to recreate the look of what you see here in these pictures, so you can understand why they look the way they look. But I'm gonna have to restart from scratch because, for example, there's gonna be an arm attached to these wings, and maybe have the wings hinge separately from the arms or something like that. And then, yeah, the whole tank mode is gonna have to turn into the legs. So yeah, there is a few things that we need to change. All that being said, you know, I can use this as my reference somehow, uh, and then start thinking about what I want to do. So usually I like to start from the rubber mode when I do things, because I find it easier to then combine things together and transform it, let's say in Blender, and see where we're going with it. Um, so let's take this and put it on this side for now. So these are gonna be other references that I'm gonna use because I need to transform it. Uh, this is here just as a reference for example, joints that I know work well, kind of thing. So I could steal, for example, a shoulder joint or uh, a hip joint or something, but probably not. Maybe just the waist joint, but we'll see. Um, and because I'm gonna focus on this part, then we can take, let's say, these guys and hide them for now, so that we can just focus on this part. So we have the tank. Let me fix this so that, let me hide this bit as well. This is my white box where I take the rendering, but we can see that later. So now that we got this that we're trying to focus on, we can also bring everything down to, you know, the red line, so that you get no interference from when you're moving the camera around a bit. And I'm gonna put the cannons aside because those are gonna be probably the last thing, or one of the last things to deal with. And I usually start from the feet, no particular reason. But here we have the time threads that are already designed, and I'm not particularly happy with it. They're too different from what they're supposed to be. So maybe we are gonna recreate them as well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and move them aside. And maybe we can start from there. So again, reference is always important. So here we have the tongue thread is gonna look like yeah, just like a normal tongue thread with visible circular let's say engine wheels, whatever you want to call that. I don't know the technical term for that, but I suppose that the thread goes, it's hard to tell from this picture, but it looks like it goes all the way back to there, but only tilts up at the front. So let's start creating the tongue thread. I'm gonna start with a cube, and the cube is there, and it's here in line with everything else. So we want to create that tongue thread kinda look. So let's start with the width as well. So I'm gonna shrink this along the y-axis until I think it's big enough, and then you can always check the item sizes to see how big you're making it. So this is not even 1 centimeter wide at the moment, which, you know, looking at this, I think that's a good size for it. So let me pause here the recording. So we got the tongue thread to be almost 1 centimeter wide, which I think it's fair. And this is gonna be at the moment 2 millimeter tall, because you see it's occupying 2 blocks. So I'm gonna split this, go into edit mode, split it, and then you can add this let's say cutting line, and then I'm gonna select the face selector, and then I'm gonna extrude this up another millimeter. So this is creating the basic of the tank thread pattern, let's say. If I wanted it to be bigger, then I can move it up to maybe 2 millimeters. Let's go for 2 millimeters so that you can actually see. Although it doesn't look like it's a deep tongue thread, so let's change it back to just 1 millimeter. So this is just a simple shape now. That is the base of, let's call it the tongue thread. So what I can do is I can select all, I can duplicate it, and now I can move it along the X axis to then go together and become now a longer shape. So I can repeat this another time, and as you can see I start forming the actual tongue thread like that. So now maybe I select everything again and I do another, but with all of this. So now we are starting to get some size on this. So when you come out of the edit mode, you can see that the length in of the object is almost 4 centimeters now. So it's a decent size. So maybe we can start curving down and see how that's gonna play out. So now, because these are all originally separate objects, when you press L and you do UVs, it's gonna select just that particular object that was the original. And yeah, we just need to play with like curves and make it so that, you know, it kinda gets that shape that we are trying to achieve, even if it's not the prettiest. But you know, it does the job. So here I'm gonna try and overlap them a little bit, because then the final shape, let's say, has, you know, no gaps in printing it, and it's not gonna have problems. Now this bit here, I want it to be back to being, let's say, the opposite of that. So maybe instead of doing this, I'm gonna remove it, or just gonna undo it. I'm gonna select this, duplicate it, and then rotate by 180. So you can actually type 180 and it will rotate by 180. That is rotating it on the y-axis because I'm facing it this way. But if I wanted to rotate it on the z-axis, then I could do z, and you can see that line. And now you can do 180, and it flips it by 180 on the z-axis. So we can go on now and do this. Maybe I didn't go far enough. Let me overlap a bit less. And when you move things, you can press shift to, let's say, slow it down, so you can see the difference when I'm pressing shift and when I'm not. And then now that I'm here, we can do two things. We can either have the back be different from the front, or we can, let's say, try and mirror what was happening on this side. I'm gonna try and mirror it, so I'm gonna select the vertex selector, I'm gonna select the X-ray option, which means that when I select something like this, it's gonna select through all the vertices, even if the ones that I don't necessarily see right now. Um, I'm gonna give it a Control plus to select an extra one, and then we'll see what happens. So I'm gonna Shift D to duplicate, X to move it along the X axis. Then I'm gonna mesh mirror along the X, and then I'm gonna move it back along the X. Now I want this to align. What do I want this to align? I feel that I like that being aligned better. And we got the time thread. So now we can go and have a look at the other elements. So there's going to be some sort of panel that constitutes the back of this. That's going to fill in the space. And then we're going to have this circle. So I'm going to do the circles first. Always as part of the edit mode. I can add cylinder. This time, where did it go? So this cylinder, I'm gonna rotate it on the x-axis by 90, and we're gonna make it bigger. So we kind of want it to be this big, and by making it bigger, it expanded it in every direction. We don't need the X-ray anymore. It can expand in every direction, so it's really a decent size for what we need, I think. But what we want is we want this cylinder to be empty inside. So what we can do is we can select that face, and then we can create an inlay that looks like it's not circular anymore. So I'm gonna squish it a little bit, and now we can extrude this face towards the y-axis inside to create that empty look. Yeah. So now, like before, I'm gonna, well, I could select it and just do what we were doing before, but I think that we need to have something that really pushes this threads to move. And I've done something similar on the other tank threads for the main carrier case. So I'm gonna do it as well here. So I'm selecting alternate faces. As you can see, you always end up with the right amount. And then we're gonna select face, extrude faces along normals. Now this will give you this effect where things are escaping from, let's say, the center of the figure. Although it's not playing quite nicely because I think for some reason this got misshapen. So you know what, I'm gonna start again. I'm gonna delete this, delete all faces. Oop. Select normal, yeah. X, delete all faces. Let's restart from scratch. So I'm gonna add a cylinder that is up here. I'm gonna rotate by 90, make it bigger. You can see how bigger it gets. And then select this face and do the, no, it's doing this thing. Usually this results in a perfect cylindrical shape, so I don't understand why it's not happening. Let's try and do it outside the actual shape. So instead of doing it as part of it, I'm gonna do it here as add mesh cylinder. So now I have an object that is separate from the one that I'm working with, and maybe that is gonna do the trick. So I still want to go big, move it where I want it to be. Now when I enter edit mode, it's gonna be only the edit mode for this object, not for the whole thing. And let's see if that, yeah, that looks better. As you can see, it's more uniform and it's round. And I can do this. You can check by moving with 1 moves to the front, 3 moves to the side, 7 moves underneath, and then you can do Control 1 to move at the back, Control 3 to move on the other side, Control 7 to move at the top, and then, you know, with the camera rotation with the middle of the mouse to rotate as you like. And I use a combination of all of this, to be honest, because it's quite handy to be able to see, I don't know, sides and understand what you're doing. Anyway, we were at the point where we needed to select these faces and alternate them. If you end up at the end and you're selecting 2 bits together or something, it means that somehow you managed to skip 1 bit. So now when we do extrude faces along normal, as you can see, it's more regular. And that looks like an actual cogwheel kind of thing. Yeah, easy peasy. Something else we could do is, I don't know, if you want to give it some character, for example, I'm gonna select these edges only instead of selecting the whole face. And now that I select everything, I can just move the edge backwards a little bit. And that gives a kind of funky look to this cogwheel. Not at the back, just at the front. I like it. So now that we got the cog done, we can move it in a way that it's more realistic for that cogwheel to move the tank tread. And we're gonna need, you know, the same thing on the other side, like that, and then we can go and have a look at our reference again to see. So that one is gonna be another one at the bottom and another one at the bottom. So we can do something like this one is gonna sit here maybe, and we're gonna align maybe the center of this with that line, maybe a bit more, or maybe not. Maybe let's put it here. No, it makes more sense here. So that, yeah. So I'm gonna have to eyeball a little bit. I think that's fair. Now, if we really wanted this to be symmetrical, I could also do something else, which is to pretty much add a mirror effect to this, which will make it absolutely symmetrical. I don't necessarily like to enable it often, just because I feel that it loses character, and this is not necessarily needing to be symmetrical at all costs. So I'm just gonna add 1 or 2 wheels. I'm gonna add one in the middle here, like that. Now, because these are all separate, they're all not an object, there is a way to unite all of these objects. Now, the easiest way is to do a Ctrl J when you select everything, and that just puts all the objects together, but that doesn't merge the actual mesh. And for 3D printing, that's actually not quite good, because you will have a lot of internal faces that can cause problems to your slicer, understanding what's outside and what's inside, create objects that get printed and then they fall apart because the faces don't want to touch the other face and things like that. So, bottom line is, when I merge my meshes, I tend to use a tool that is called Bool Tool that helps a lot by calculating all of the meshes to merge together to actually become one mesh. Before we do that, I'm gonna create also the panel that goes right at the back, or we could create it by doing something else, but I'll just create it as an additional panel. So I'm gonna add another mesh cube. I usually start with a cube because it's the simplest, let's say, to work with. So say for example I got this, I'll make it this big, but I don't want it to be that wide, I want it to be thin actually. So maybe we can align it already with the back here, and we're gonna have something that sticks out so that we can attach this to this, because this maybe it's gonna be printed in black, and then we're gonna have it you know, glued to the actual figure separately. But let's not worry about that for now. So I'm gonna make this wider up until we reach that point. And now this is where it becomes more interesting. So I could just do this for now, go at the back, and then start saying, go in edit mode obviously. Maybe let's move it at the back all the way here for now. And then in edit mode, I can split this into parts. Now, before I select the split, I can use the mouse wheel to actually split into more parts, and I can make it so that, see for example, if I do this, then now I have these edges that I can use to turn the shape into what I actually want. So for example, that goes up all the way there, then I select this and I select this, and I do the same until it's inside the tongue thread, and then maybe we can do the last one with this and go up a little bit, and voila. So now if this gets moved in along the y-axis, we can see, for example, that it's cutting through the thread in a couple of places, so I can edit it here and here and go inside, and that should do it. So now we want to merge everything. So the Bool tool that I mentioned is going to be in this edit tab. You have to enable it as a plugin, but it will give you all of these tools like auto mirror, so you can select from here if you want to mirror by X, Y, Z, and control other things. Usually auto mirror by X, to be honest. never really had the need to auto mirror by others. Maybe why when I was working on the trailer for Transformate, because it was, let's say I was working facing uh, along the X, so when I was mirroring stuff I was mirroring along the Y. But otherwise we got a series of objects now that we want to merge together. Now to unite them, so we got object union, so we can select all of them and we can actually just unite them all in one go. Now as you can see, this is dangerous because it creates bits and bobs that they all need to be calculated at the same time, and it doesn't like it. So maybe instead we can start by saying, does it work together that way? And it still doesn't. Now when you get these problems, usually what I do is I use the 3D print tool, which is another plugin you can enable in Blender, and I start checking for no manifold edges like this. So when there are no manifold edges, the shape is pretty much not well done enough for the 3D printer to print it to start with. But also when you're trying to merge and unite with this, it makes it impossible for the program to understand the actual shape. So when you go in edit mode and you click no manifold edges here, it will tell you which one. So right at the start here we have some problems here, and you can see by dragging it what it is about. Now chances are that we can repair it by clicking this button called make manifold. So you click it, and as you can see, nothing has happened in practice, but when you check again, then the no manifold edges is gone away. Another thing that is useful to check, because we pretty much copy pasted one shape and it's merged all together randomly, we can go on mesh, we can go under merge and then by distance, and it might remove some vertices when they are inside. And then we can also do mesh, normals, recalculate outside. So all of those things are useful for not just for Blender, but also for your slicer to understand better what is the shape, what is it outside and what's inside, and all this kind of stuff. Now I'm more confident that when we are trying to unite things, it's not gonna explode, but let's see. Yeah, it made it even worse. Lovely. So this is now making me look like a fool. Let's see if it plays nicely with this. No. So yeah, because that shape of the tank thread was created in a certain way, it's really not liking it. Which is a shame, because I've done the other one and it was absolutely fine. Or maybe I didn't check. Let me see. Maybe this one wasn't checked for. No, that one is fine. But I don't have the back panel either. I just merged things differently, I guess. Let's see. Let's see if we can skip the back panel then. Gonna move it. I'm gonna hide it for now. We're gonna need something else though. Let's bring it back. I'm gonna make a copy and move it up, and then maybe just make it so this guy is. So let's merge all of this together first, and hopefully that's gonna work fine. Yeah, so that worked. And then I think I created the other one as all one shape. I didn't have to do this. That's why. So yeah, it doesn't like us fiddling with things. What a dilemma. So at that point, I'm just gonna join it, let's say the wrong way, and then hope that the slicer understands it. Which we can try. I'm gonna have a quick go and then let you know if it worked or not. So here we are in the slicer now to see if my theory is correct or not. But I might be expecting this to just explode on me when I'm trying slicing it. So I need to go into carry threads, and at first look the object looks alright. It's got, you know, the underneath, it's got this part is lying on the bed, it's all connected, you know, it's not gonna fall apart. But the problem is when you slice it, you need to go and see if it separates the two shapes that you joined instead of having them fit together, let's say. And you can already see where the problem starts to be. So the tongue thread is all fine, but then this bit here is gonna have a space in it. You can see, so that's not gonna be connected properly. We can also go and look at lower layers. That looks connected okay to the cogwheels. It's not choosing it, but yeah. So I think the real problem is only that bit, so we need to fix it manually. So I'm gonna go back in Blender quickly. You're not gonna see this, but I'm gonna try and do some kind of, I don't know, repair or remove of internal faces and things like that, which you can see with the X-ray, for example. When you have the X-ray and you have the face selection, then, oh god, there's too many. Where about is the problem? Is one, two, between the second and the third. So 1, 2, 3. So, oh, maybe it's because there is a space. Okay, so we can work with that and fill the gap in that space. So then I'm gonna export, check it. It's still manifold. I'm gonna export it, and when I export it, you see Cura tells you, would you like to reload the STL? So now I reload it, and when you go to prepare, it's still looks alright. But when you slice it, that gap is gone. So hopefully this is gonna be alright to print like this without problems. So what we're left to do is to add a connector or two here, probably just one, so that this can be added to the figure without problems. So now that we are back with now that we're back in Blender, I can come here and then we can see to create something let's say that will allow me to pack this into the side of the leg. And at this point I'm just gonna add a cube while I'm in edit mode, and this is gonna come down. I don't want it to be too big. I want it to be like here, more or less in the middle. And then whenever I'm gonna create the leg, I will want to have, you know, this back in. So to make sure that I have the size of this thing for the leg, I'm gonna duplicate it, leave it in place, but I'm gonna separate selection. So now when I go out of the object, I have the object itself, but I also have that cube that I can then use with the bull tools to do a difference. And you will see that probably in the next part, because I feel that this is already long enough. So not very exciting, but we made a tongue thread. I can go here and now select the material. So I have a black one, for example. So now I can see, for example, the part that is connected and the part that is there waiting. And then, yeah, if I wanted to put it on this guy now, I can do, let's see, rotate by X, 90, rotate by this, 90, and we can put it here to see how it looks on the leg. And then, because I want it on the other side, I'm gonna duplicate, move along the X, object, mirror, X global, and now as you can see it's mirrored, and now I can move it back against the leg, and that's how I do my mirror pieces. So because this was called threads, the mirror one, because I duplicated it, is gonna have an automatic counter as well. So every object has its own counter. So yeah, because I split the white box, let's call it, that took the name threads 001. So the black one here is thread 002, and then this is thread 003. Before I export STL files using the 3D print add-on, I always make sure that I have, let's say, sensible names. And then in this case I separate them by what I'm making as well. So in this case I'm working on carry, therefore I will save them into a folder called STL for carry, so that when everything is ready, all I have to do is zip it up and upload it on cults, and everything is already organized and split into the various parts. So let's finish it here. This is how I work when I'm working on things for my projects. If this is gonna turn out to be not wide enough, I can always, you know, make it wider, or I can select just the parts that I want to make wider, you know, all that kind of stuff. But for now it's fine. It's a tongue thread and it's attached to the leg. I'll probably wait to work on this while I'm recording another video, maybe tomorrow, but this is it for now. Again, not much exciting, but sometimes the process is slow. You just need to, you know, power through it. So tomorrow we're gonna see how we're gonna make the feet and maybe the legs. The feet are gonna be the front of the tongue thread, the front of the tank, while the legs will need to have systems where they will need to collapse to make space for this sitting area. So we will have to see that as well. Maybe I can make it so that the legs twist to connect and to form uh, the actual tank. So we will need to see, maybe this will need to be in a hinge, maybe we're overcomplicating things. There is all of these discussions to be had, and I'll think about it uh, while, I don't know, while I'm working tomorrow or something. That looks, it's a bit higher for some reason. So yeah, this was an example of how to create a more complex shape in Blender and export it as an STL. See it is sliced in Cura, checking, making sure that it's gonna print correctly and all the kind of good stuff. For now, that's all. So catch you guys later.